Welcome to a Legendarium special about the 5 chief gods of the Anglo-Saxons. The Angles, Saxons, Jutes, Franks, and other Germanic tribes lived along the North Sea coast of Germany and Denmark. During Rome's crisis of the 3rd century, they rowed across the sea in keel boats to loot Roman Britannia, forcing Rome to build stone forts along what became known as the Saxon shore. More than 2 centuries later, as Rome wholly collapsed and rising sea levels turned the Anglo-Saxons' coastal plains into swamps and marshes, whole nations, men, women, and children, crossed the sea and carved Roman Britannia into a patchwork of Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. A warlike people, Anglo-Saxon folklore abounded with tales of great heroes who wielded swords possessed by demons and lesser gods. Let us now look at the 5 greatest gods of the Anglo-Saxons. Woden, the king of the gods, and very similar to the Norse Odin, reigned over heaven and earth. Anglo-Saxon warriors offered him tribute before battle in exchange for his protection. They believed the spear, the most common weapon on Anglo-Saxon battlefields, to be the sacred weapon of Woden, who also kept 2 pet wolves and 2 ravens named Thought and Memory. They flew across the world, bringing back news to their master. Since such ravens often flew over battlefields to feast upon the numerous dead, Anglo-Saxons came to believe that the 2 crows augured death for those who saw them. However, Anglo-Saxons also believed that Woden mounted a chariot drawn by an 8-legged horse, leading a whirlwind of ghosts who rode black horses and bucks, accompanied by black hounds. In winter storms, Anglo-Saxons believed that Woden's hunters blew their horns and that those who opened their windows and howled with enough might get a trophy like a haunch of mutton or even a severed deer leg. In time, Christians came to explain Woden's wild hunt as being a whirlwind of the condemned. Those who did not embrace Christianity would spend eternity with pagan gods in winter storms, while Christians would go to heaven and sing hymns with the angels. Woden kept the goddess Frige as his wife and thus queen of the gods. As such, she became the goddess of marriage, children, and the harvest. Women made tributes to her before childbirth, hoping to gain her support before this dangerous yet critical moment in life. If the women survived childbirth, they would give tribute again to thank Frige for delivering them. As goddess of the hearth, she also protected Anglo-Saxons in their cozy villages from the horrors which they believed to lurk in the forbidding hills and murky swamps beyond their borders. Her name meant beloved, and like any good wife, she spent most of her time at her spinning wheel making clothes. Anglo-Saxons, including Woden, boasted that they only wore what their dutiful and hard-working wife spun. Yet to keep an eye on the world, she sent storks to serve as her eyes and ears in the tumultuous earth. Thunor, called Thor among the Norse, was the god of weather, especially thunder and lightning. For most of history, people regarded the awesome storms they witnessed with awe and terror, believing them signs of divine anger. Anglo-Saxons believed that Thunor made the sound of thunder by striking his anvil with a hammer. They also thought lightning to be the sparks made by these awesome hammer blows. Many Anglo-Saxons wore a small hammer as a necklace amulet, as Christians would later wear crosses. The son of Woden and Frige would ride in his father's wild hunt, driving a chariot pulled by 2 he-goats. Every night while at war or on the hunt, Thunor would cook his 2 goats, eat the roast mutton, and then smoke their bones in his campfire. in the morning, the two goats would then be restored to life and ready to pull their master's chariot again before becoming his dinner again. Fourth came the Anglo-Saxon god Tu, the master of war. Anglo-Saxons especially revered Tu because of his selfless courage. Anglo-Saxons believed a terrible wolf called Fenris would bring about doomsday in part by killing mighty Woden. Fear of Fenris even led the ugly, bad-tempered dwarves of Anglo-Saxon mythology to put aside their selfishness and make a great chain. They dared the wolf to break out of it, and Fenris agreed, but only if he could take Tu's hand in his jaws as a guarantee against trickery. And when Fenris realized that he could not break the dwarf's chain, he bit off Tu's hand in anger. Despite his sacrifice, Tu became just as skilled using his left hand to wield a sword as he had once been with his right. And because of his sacrifice, he took the wolf as his totemic animal. Fifth, and finally, came Eostre, the goddess of springtime, when the Anglo-Saxons believed the world was reborn. Anglo-Saxons venerated her in the hope of ending winter early and ensuring a bountiful harvest. Some believe that the word Easter came from her name during the Christian era. Throughout April, the Anglo-Saxons worshipped her and celebrated Eostre, as they called it, by making gifts of eggs, which likely also evolved into a Christian Easter custom. Anglo-Saxons hoped this devotion brought about prosperity during the harvest, and it is also believed that the Anglo-Saxons offered hot cross buns to one another during Eostre, cut in 4 quarters to represent the 4 quarters of the moon. And in November, just before the coming of terrible and icy winter, they would make further sacrifices to all of the gods, including many of their cattle and their pigs, making burnt offerings of key organs upon the altars. Most of the meat, of course, would go into their granaries either smoked or salted, and in this way the Anglo-Saxons combined religious devotion with culling their herds before winter and stocking up for the frozen months. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.